It's Bullseye. I'm Linda Holmes, the host of NPR's Pop Culture Happy Hour. Have you heard of My Brother, and Me? It's a comedy podcast hosted by three brothers, Justin, Travis, and Griffin McElroy. They're my first guests this week. My Brother, and Me is on the Maximum Fun Podcasting Network, the same company that produces Bullseye. But take it from me, it's a really, really funny podcast. It's so funny, it actually just got turned into a real deal TV show on the streaming network Seeso. You can catch the first season online now. Like the podcast, it's an advice show, sort of. They set the whole thing in their hometown of Huntington, West Virginia. The brothers take a question from the internet and go to the most absurd possible lengths to answer it, like decorating a dorm room to make it look haunted, literally almost dying by electrocution, throwing a parade with tarantulas. The show also plays off the interaction between the three brothers, and it's kind of unreal how in sync they are with each other. In this scene, the McElroys are trying to pad their resumes a little, so they pay a visit to the mayor of Huntington, Steve Williams. It takes a little convincing at first, but he agrees to make the brothers all honorary mayors for 60 seconds.
So this now reads, blah, 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 hereby grant Griffin, legally the mayor McElroy, right. Travis, king of the mayors McElroy, Justin, your mother was my third grade teacher and she was an inspiration McElroy, powers of mayordom for just like a minute amount of time.
Yeah.
Steve Williams, beginning now.
Okay, quick. First things first. Man. Mayor Steve Williams, I'm gonna need you to move your car. Yeah, you know that list of people I gave you? Go get them.
The state bird is now abolished. There's no more state bird.
You only have responsibility over the city.
The city bird is no longer...
You said state bird.
Yep.
All right, and your 60 seconds.
Oh, wait, hold on, one more thing. Huntington, one more thing, please, one more thing. Huntington's sister city is the moon!
Revoked.
Our tenure was short but powerful.
McElroy brothers, welcome to Bullseye.
Hi,
Thank you.
It's nice to be here, but not in the context of us having to do a bunch of goofs.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, it's a kind of a relief. We can really let our hair down.
Right, absolutely. For public radio, you know. I want to ask you first about Steve Williams, who's the mayor of Huntington in that clip. Tell me about your relationship with Mayor Steve.
This is Justin, the oldest McElroy brother. Mayor Steve is the mayor of my hometown, Huntington. So I wanted to make sure if we were going to put him in our TV show that it would be something that I could continue to live with on a day. Because he's still, I mean, I don't think the mayor gives parking tickets, but he probably could.
No, yeah.
Right?
Justin still lives in Huntington, so the mayor has some sort of legal power over Justin.
This is the second time I've worked performing with Mayor Williams. A few years back, I directed the musical version of Superman. It's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman. And he played Perry White one night. And can I say, that's when I saw something in him.
A spark.
I say, this kid's got heat.
He's going to get his own spin-off series. Everybody who has seen the show is like, who's this mayor fellow?
So how was it working with folks like the mayor from your hometown in the TV show? Because I know that working in Huntington was really important to you guys.
It was very, this is Griffin, the babyest brother. Hi. It was very intimidating because I remember the first day that we shot stuff, really one of the first days of shooting all together, we had like 3 episodes worth of stuff with the mayor and like 3 episodes worth of stuff with the chief of police, both of which are people who you don't want to like, goof on.
They're like real people with like real jobs and real responsibilities.
Yeah, and they're really funny and really nice. And so like I was intimidated of them as I am of all people of a certain level of power. But also just like, I don't know, I wanted to make sure that they, looked good on the show, I guess, and they completely blew our expectations away, I think, in that department.
There was also, and this is Travis, the best brother. There was also, because we had talked about doing the show in Huntington pretty much from like the beginning of development. And we just kept like telling Seeso and telling the crew about like how great it was gonna be because everyone in Huntington was great. And then the first day we recorded with all these different people, and then they were great. And it's like, oh, thank God, we weren't lying.
Well, what's funny is what you actually just heard. That clip you just played was one of the first like proof of concept, like things that we came up with when it came to shooting in Huntington. And it was kind of a called shot where we were like, we're from this town. If it works, we could do a local boys make good thing, and maybe they'll let us be the mayor for a day.
And also, like, it was really important to us that the joke never be, aren't these guys funny and isn't everybody else dumb?
Yep.
So, like, it was terrifying because we were going into a situation where we couldn't tell them what was going to happen, but also they had to kind of roll with the punches and not become the butt of the joke. And everybody, like, just, like, got it instantly and went with it right away, and it was so much fun.
Yeah, I've heard you guys talk about really having so much affection for Huntington and wanting people outside of it to understand it and understand the people. Can you talk a little bit about what it is that you wanted your audience on the show to understand about Huntington?
Well, one of the things, like when I went away to college and like when I've moved to different places, you get the question all the time of like, oh, what was it like growing up in a small town in West Virginia? And my answer is always like, it was perfectly normal. Like, what was it like growing up where you grew up? Were there people in buildings and stuff? Yep, that's exactly the same as me.
Did they have shoe stores and libraries? Yeah, us too.
Awesome.
Cool.
And that was the thing is like our town is full of very wonderful, lovely, funny people. And there's jerks there too. And
if you haven't been to a place or you haven't been to a type of place, I think it's easy to like let that place be abstract in your mind and like kind of formless, and so whatever can come in there and fill in the gaps is going to be the thing that fills your perception in. There's a really serious opioid abuse problem there, and for some people that's making the national press, so that's what is filling in the blanks for people. And I think like for us making this show, like I don't think we set out to make like a tourism guide for Huntington, showing off all the hot nightlife locales that you could come and visit and spend money at, but more just like it's a place where people are just living, and they are living pretty happily, really.
I think whenever I mention I live in West Virginia, stereotypes about West Virginia are the first thing that get brought up, and Huntington's doesn't really fit in any of those Appalachian or quote unquote hillbilly stereotypes. And also those stereotypes are caused by poverty and are not particularly hilarious when seen in practice. So like, I don't know if our show does just a little bit to move the needle just a smidgen in West Virginia's favor, I will consider it a victory.
Yeah, you talked about the fact that Justin used to live there.
Yeah.
How much of an undertaking was it to sort of make this show and spend all this time there when you do have, all three of you, a lot going on in different directions?
Man, killer question. Yeah, I mean,
such a good question.
that entailed me and Travis both leaving our pregnant wives for 3 weeks.
no, mine came with me. I moved across the country.
Teresa and Travis moved from LA to Cincinnati basically just like a week before we started shooting.
Yeah, we put everything into a storage container and shipped it to Cincinnati while we took 2 suitcases and our dog and our cat and my, at that point, I think 6-month pregnant wife to shoot the show.
Justin and I also have another full-time job that we just bailed on for a month to make it. So like it was a lot of, it was rough. It was a very, very challenging 3 weeks, but partially because of like how much stuff we had to kind of leave behind, because we've built an empire out of doing like 100 little easy things. I think it's a good way of putting it. And we had to shelve like 90 of those when we were making this.
And do a hard thing.
And do one big really hard thing. Which,
if you want to point to the biggest challenge, it is that we continued to record My Brother, and Me while we were filming My Brother, and Me.
Dark days.
By like the 3rd episode, when we were actually all in the same room, we were all looking at each other like, I have nothing left to say to you.
There's no one I want to be looking at less than these two guys. Like,
we haven't recorded in the same room outside of a live show in like 4 years. And so it was really like, well, this is weird. I can see your face.
We actually had to take off our pants one episode because
I
our
remember that.
energy was so low that we needed just something to do that was different because we were absolutely tapped. So we took off our pants that episode, did some power poses, got back in the groove a little bit. But yeah, that was a big ask. In retrospect, maybe not our smartest play.
It's Bullseye. I'm talking with Justin, Travis, and Griffin McElroy. The three host the comedy podcast My Brother, and Me, which just got turned into a TV series on the streaming network Seeso. I want to double back a little bit and talk about your empire now that you brought up your empire.
I'm so sorry I used that word, everybody.
No, I was going to use that word.
Oh, good.
So I'm happy that you used it first. For people who haven't heard My Brother and Me, I did bring a clip. This is a clip that begins with Justin talking about a childhood fear.
I used to, when I was a kid, I would sometimes get into the deep end of a pool, and I would have the thought, what if there was a shark in here? And then over the next few minutes of being in the deep end, that thought would gradually congeal to me, there is a shark in here.
So, Justin, the fact that you could see through the water didn't do anything.
Don't matter. He was behind me. He's avoiding me.
He's made of glass.
Behind me. Glass shark. Glass shark love fat kid. That's one thing about glass shark you gotta know. Glass shark, he loved the fat kid. You stay out the water, fat kid. Glass shark coming for you. He get you down there bad deep water, that dark water. Fat kid, no go. Glass shark, come to that dark water. He get you, fat kid. You swim around, he bite your trunks right off. You tubby little fish. You swim all you want, flap around. Glass shark gonna come.
Now, the reason why I picked this clip, which goes on for about another, I don't know, minute
Too long.
of... no,
Yeah, it's like every other My Brother and Me bit that ever works.
No. I love it because it's like, have you ever seen Dennis Quaid in The Big Easy doing like a New Orleans accent?
I don't think so.
This is what it reminds me of, and it makes me feel so at home to hear this like movie accent that goes on for quite a long time. But what I love about Glass Shark, and this is a little bit of, comedy dissection, is that it is very collaborative, right? I can hear all of you putting together Glass Shark.
I feel like Justin really got the ball across the end zone
Right.
with Glass Shark, but yeah, I guess Travis and I did assist in that play, kind of mixing my sports metaphors.
It's actually really, it's weird to listen to after having recorded it, which is usually how I prefer to listen to things after they've been recorded. I'm so erudite. This is probably too much deconstruction, but when you're listening to that bit, there's a moment where someone says he's made of glass, and I say, glass shark, and it's not funny, and it's not a joke. It's just a recognition that, like, there it is. Okay, I need a second to, like,
Yeah.
we found the thing. That's the thing. And, like, that sort of, like, stall there is what it takes to get to, like, that's the pivot. Like, that's as close as I can get to, like, nudging them because we don't look at each other or touch each other while we record. Like, that.
Like we are now, touching each other.
We're all holding hands.
That's the weirdest, and it happens. You listen to episodes. We've done 342 now, and like there are many moments in which one of us will open our mouth and say a thing, and we don't know what the rest of the thing is gonna be.
Sure.
And sometimes it goes nowhere.
It goes nowhere. Or we get the Glass Shark moment, and Justin doesn't, to build on this, doesn't say Glass Shark, make us realize, hey, it's Glass Shark time, and then somebody else is like, oh, I'm going to get in here and get a good goof in. So yeah,
I got another one. Crystal Whale.
Crystal Whale would actually be fantastic.
It's actually pretty good.
That's
Right,
actually
That's
really
the
good.
sequel. No, edit that out. We gotta save that for sweeps.
But like it's collaborative when it works, and God help me, we're just always trying not to like be competitive about it. I think sometimes.
Yeah, you talked about a couple of things. You talked earlier about trusting each other completely, and you talked about trying not to be competitive. Do you think there are things about the way that you grew up and the way that your family worked when you were growing up that built this kind of relationship between you? Because I can imagine parents listening to you talk and thinking, I would love for my kids to grow up that way.
I do want. Okay, let me clear because I don't think it's that we're not.
Travis is countering a point that no one has made.
I don't think it's that we're not competitive. I think that we are competitive, like teammates are competitive, like people working together who still want each other to succeed, but also want to do a good job. Like, it's the difference between like a tennis match and like a basketball team working together. Because that's the thing, we grew up like leapfrogging each other's jokes and like not one-upping so much as like,
Right.
now I'll take it and I'll add this part and I'll do this.
When we talk about like our family background, like the thing we always come back to is like we ate dinner together as a family every single night, no exceptions, and that was essentially just a goof contest where we tried to make our mom and dad and each other laugh, and it was competitive. Like it was a competition where the win condition was you make your family laugh. and you have like a really fun dinner. I can draw a direct line from that dinner that we had every single night to what we do on the podcast. It is pretty much the exact same thing.
We hear from people like, man, I'm not close to my adult siblings. I wish I had the relationship you guys do. And the honest truth about it is you should record a podcast with them every week and then talk to them 3 times a week about business stuff and then go on tours with them. And then, like, we didn't have this relationship when we started recording. I mean, certainly, like, that was the main idea when we started was, like, we're going to be living in different places and we're going to have adult lives and, like, let's install this thing as a way that would make sure we stay close. And throughout the process of recording it and the growth of the show over the past almost 7 years, like, we have certainly had to learn who we are as adults and how we get along together as adult people.
Right.
That I don't think we would necessarily have that level of relationship were we not also working on the podcast.
I also do want to give more credit, like, to our parents because, like, on the one hand, we had our dad who was showing us maybe one of the weirdest, most diverse collections of comedy influences ever.
Yeah, really random.
And also simultaneously, like, talking to us about why it was funny.
Yeah, what are some of those influences?
So, like, MST3K was, like, a pretty big one. Watched a lot of Mystery Science Theater 3000.
I can remember if you put on an episode of Kids in the Hall, I can pretty much tell you every sketch in that episode in order. Like, we watched so much of that show and, like, a lot of Saturday Night Live, even when we were way too... For me, being the youngest, like, there was a lot of me... Even MST3K, which I love now, I didn't understand any of the jokes in it because they were all, like, these deep... like 1970s like film references for the most part. I didn't get it, but like I kind of like played along with it for the most part.
Also SCTV
and
stuff like that.
Marx Brothers,
Marx Brothers, Jonathan Winters. It was a pretty wide assortment of stuff.
And then on the other hand, we had our mother, who was like one of the nicest people I've ever known in my entire life, being this influence of like when we'd sit around and make those jokes, it wasn't about being mean.
Yeah.
And it was like, that wasn't cool. Like, we weren't allowed to say fart for a while. Like, that was upsetting to her because it was just it was vulgar. And, like, that idea of, like, okay, so how can we be funny without just doing that? And now that we're adults, we've learned that we can just say fart and make people laugh, and it's way easier.
Please beep that out. Please. This is NPR, Travis. We're not at Uncle Lester's Chuckle Hut where you can just say whatever.
Yeah, well, now that you are adults and now that you have podcasts that people listen to, and it's clear that the relationship that you have on the show is your relationship, right? And you do the Adventure Zone where you are with your dad. You all have other podcasts with wives and in-laws and other folks. Is it difficult to have those close personal relationships exist both kind of in real life and also out in front of people?
Yeah,
I'll say no. Like,
yeah,
I don't
my
think
wife,
so at all.
my wife has said when people ask that question of like us, where she's like, when they get on stage, it's exactly the same as being on a car trip with them, and like I don't know how true that is, but according to my wife, like when we sit around and have a conversation, like at Christmas, it's the same as us sitting in front of a crowd. I mean, we're probably trying a little bit harder in front of a crowd, but like it all feels pretty natural.
There are times when and this happened more early on, but because it is so close to our actual relationship, there were times when I would bristle when other people would comment on that relation. Like, while I understand I open myself up to that by recording a podcast with them in a relationship that like mirrors our own in real life, like still having people tell me that I'm being too mean to my brother or whatever,
right?
Even if they're right, is like, hey, it's very hypocritical of me because hey, mind your own business. But also, thank you so much for listening. But also, mind your own business.
I really don't think it's that different from our real lives, and that makes it cool most of the time. Weird sometimes. We have like familial nicknames that our parents came up with when we were babies that our fans will call us sometimes. Like that, my mom and dad called me Ditto when I was born because when I was a baby. It's from High and Lois, right?
You look like Baby Ditto from
High and Lois, and so like fans will sometimes be like, "Hey, Ditto, great job today," and it's like, it's kind of it's cool, right? Like we've built. That's the whole thing. It's like we've allowed that level of access into our lives. It's weird, but on the inverse of that is like my wife and I do a podcast about the Bachelor, and and the like number one review that we get on iTunes is just like, man, I love your guys' relationship. And that's Justin made a face. I think that's really cool. Like, I think that's very real.
There's
and
a
that's very
paranoia.
cool.
There's a paranoia on my part because I have a podcast called Sawbones that I do with my wife, and she's a doctor, and so it's a medical history podcast. And then we have a few podcasts together, and then our dad is on a podcast. I do have a paranoia that there will come a day where I will wish I had held more back for myself that other people would not know. And that is not something I feel currently, but I live with the knowledge that that's a genie I can't necessarily put back into the bottle. So I do have like a deep-seated, I think, fear that at some point I will become an intensely private person, I guess, is what will happen, and I won't be able to walk it back.
When you deal with the very enthusiastic listeners that you have, they are very deeply into a kind of a McElroy verse, I would say, to the degree that like your family has a wiki.
Yes.
Which most families don't have a wiki.
Just us and the Osmonds.
Right, exactly. My experience was for people who don't know everything about the show, going to the wiki will make you more confused.
Yes.
Because it is so dense with things that are not going to mean anything unless you already listened to the show. Do you approach the show mostly as a project of kind of super satisfying those listeners that you already have? Do you worry about kind of making it something that's going to make sense to people who are new to it? Because it's pretty dense with back references and stuff like that.
There's some of that. There's some of that we definitely do. Like anytime we even come close to talking about a ghost or a horse, we're like, oh, let's give the people what they want, and we'll do stuff like that. But to be completely honest, when it comes to the comedy side of things and like who we are shaping our comedy for, it is this is gonna sound cornball, but it's like just the way it is. It's really just for each other. Like I'm not whenever I'm like making a joke, I'm not thinking like, oh, this is gonna play really well to our audience. It is like I think this is gonna make Justin and Travis laugh.
There are in-jokes that aren't show in-jokes that are just our in-jokes. Like when one of us references their off-court buddies, which is a reference to an old episode of the cartoon Doug about his basketball shoes that he wore when he was off the court. Like, that probably seems like a weird reference to something on the show before. No, it's just something we talk about constantly, and so it makes its way genetically into the program.
And we incorporated this in the TV show, too, where we were like, we didn't want to do artifice. We don't talk about it beforehand and, like, say, okay, with this question, here's a place where we can fit in a joke about horses. Like, it just all comes up in the discussion. And if we, my hope is always that, like, if you have listened to the show before, you like that joke on like 8 levels. And if you haven't listened to the show before, you like that joke on like 4 levels.
I think the advantages to how closely you work with your family are obvious to everybody who listens to your shows and your work. Is it complicated to think when you're making big decisions about whether to do a TV show, how long to do the TV show, how to do the TV show? It is a question about being in a family business, but it's not a kind of family business where you feel like, you know, if one person decided they didn't want to do it anymore, you could hire somebody else. You are very interdependent.
I think I see, yeah. There are times when it complicates things. Right when my daughter was old enough to where travel to like live shows and stuff would be a lot easier, the boys simultaneously had children because they coordinated their lovemaking. But the honest to God truth is, it makes it easier because it's not an option. Like, if the boys say to me, like, actually, that doesn't work for me in my life right now, there's no discussion to be had. Like, there's no reason to talk about it because I'm never going to push them to do something professionally that hurts them personally because they're my brothers first. So we're not going to talk about it anymore.
I feel like the reason why this has not really been an issue is that all of us lack this unchecked ambition where it's like, I didn't get angry at Justin because he had a newborn and couldn't tour when like our live shows were selling out, and we would do these tours of like a few shows in the Midwest and they would all sell out, and it's like, guys, we could do this full time. There wasn't that like, element that like pushed it over, where all of a sudden we get frustrated because one person doesn't want to do the thing or can't do the thing. There isn't this like friction between any of us, like, oh, why can't you just be more on board with this? I want this so bad. If one of us is like that, I think it would be a huge problem, but it's just not. It's miraculously it is not there.
You're listening to Bullseye. My guests are Travis, Griffin, and Justin McElroy. The brothers star in the brand new Seeso series, My Brother, and Me. It's based on the podcast of the same name. So I suspect that you guys, because you don't live in a media town like LA or New York, you live, particularly Justin, you live in Huntington, that there are things that are tougher about that in terms of having a media career. Is that the case?
Well, I have a really good answer for this.
Take it away, Travis.
I actually moved to LA for 2 years, from 2014 to just 2016, and my goal was like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to like shake some hands and meet some people.
And Justin and I were immediately like, oh, that's it. That's the podcast, folks. Hope you enjoyed
gone.
it. We made it about 200 episodes in, and then Travis big timed us.
And here's the thing. I'm full time. I just do podcasting. And so like I was out there and I would go to comedy shows and I'd meet these people and they were awesome and they were fun and I'd go to these events and they were great. But then I'd go home to where my studio was and I'd record there, and like there was no reason to live there. And I think especially with the internet and the way it has provided artistic opportunities for people who don't live in places like Chicago and LA and New York, people who live in places like Huntington, that they get to be like, okay, I still make something.
My message to people who live in smaller towns who have creative ambitions would be this, and it's something I tell people a lot. If you stay in your hometown and you work and you give it your all and you try your best in your creative work, eventually someone will pay a bunch of money to come shoot a TV show about you.
Yeah.
It happened to me. There's not a lot of other
Empirically speaking, you're batting
it can
1,000.
happen.
It does happen.
Yeah.
That they'll just come,
America, this is you.
they'll bring the TV show to your house, and then you don't have to go anywhere, really.
But that's really what it comes down to is, what do you want to do? If you want to audition for movies, you should move to a place where people are making movies.
Unless you're just so funny that they're like, we gotta move the movie to Huntington. I feel like that we lose that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was the big thing with Huntington. Is like, well, one of them's in Huntington, and he's very funny.
Yeah.
He's very funny.
I moved from LA to Huntington to shoot a TV show there.
Well, I appreciate so much you guys talking about this. Justin, Travis, and Griffin McElroy, the show, My Brother, and Me. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Travis, Griffin, and Justin McElroy, the brothers' Seeso show, My Brother, and Me, is available to stream now. You can also check out their podcast of the same name on iTunes or NPR One or Stitcher or whatever you use to listen to podcasts.